Hello everyone, and welcome to another very interesting game from round 8 of the 2018 Altibox Norway Championship. It's a game between Viswanathan, Anand and Fabiano Caruana. Now, regarding the photo challenge from the previous video, yes, of course, it is a young Hikaru Nakamura. So, okay, we've had a couple of photo challenges so far, and they were, since all of you knew the answers, really easy. It's time for a really difficult one. In this photo challenge, you are able to win 5 points. For each person you recognize in the photo. There are 5 people in the photo, so you should know. I believe you will know at least 3, but maybe some of you will know even 4, and some of you who truly have vast knowledge will know even 5. So here it is. Enjoy the photo. Now let's see it. Let's see how you do. So you don't have to do it in any particular order. You just have to recognize all the people in the photo. So good luck to everyone, and let's check out this game. So we do have only one photo from this event. It's a photo from the opening. Fabi holding, I believe that's a pawn. But anyways, the game is much more interesting than the photo. So let's check it out. Anand opens with e4. We have e5, knight to f3, and of course, by now all of you should know what Fabi plays in this position. Of course, knight to f6, he goes for the Petrov defense. Knight captures on e5, Anand chooses the classical variation. d6, knight f3, knight captures on e4. d3, kicking the knight back, knight f6, and now d4. d5, and bishop to d3. So the standard line, and the bishop to d6, pretty much transposed into the French defense exchange variation now. We have castles, and bishop to g5, pinning the knight. h6, attacking the bishop to h4, and here I believe Fabi discovered a new move. c6 does exist in the database, bishop to e6 also as an opening maneuver, but here knight to c6 is played, and I checked the database, and it seems like this is the only game played with this move so far. So okay, c3, we have g5, bishop to g3, and now comes knight e4. A very strong knight in the center. We have bishop captures, and here is the very nice moment in the game. Of course, black can play knight captures on d6, queen captures on d6 is also an option. Queen captures on d6 seems to be the most natural move after white develops. f5 is coming, and black will get a very nice position and a very nice expansion on the king side. But here Fabi doesn't play queen captures on d6, nor does he play knight captures on d6. Rather, he plays c captures on d6. And it was a very interesting. Grandmaster Johann Ludwig Hammer said that this means that Fabi is playing for the win. And I saw an interview with Fabi after this game. He said that he did have this position analyzed on the table at home, and he said that he knew that this wasn't really all that great, but white had to play like a perfect game to punish this move. And Fabi said that he thought that the best continuation here is definitely queen to b3, but Anand decides to go knight f to d2. He attacks the knight on e4, and now we have f5. So okay, Fabi did double his d-pawn, but he does have a very strong knight in the center of the board. Knight to a3, we have bishop to e6, knight to c2 now, and knight captures on d2. Queen captures, and now f4, not allowing this knight to gain any activity via knight to e3. We have rook a to e1, queen comes to f6, f3, and now rook to f7. Fabi is preparing to double rooks on the f file. Rook to e2, rook a to f8. We have knight to e1, and now knight to e7. And now what do you do here? Well, your knight on e1 isn't really the best piece. You do want to activate it. Somehow you have to remaneuver your pieces and get the knight maybe to d3, and from there it will maybe be able to become a bit more active. So bishop to c2, we have a5, bishop to b3 now, and rook to g8, getting the rook out of this bishop's diagonal, and also the king will have to move as well. Queen to d3, we have bishop to d7, now comes a4, not allowing b5. King moves to h8. Now both the king and rook have moved from this bishop's diagonal. Queen to d2, we have h5, and now knight does come to d3. And here it seems like you would like to push a pawn here, but that would be too hasty. If you did something like this, then captures captures, and after rook captures, there really isn't anything for black here. I mean, it would be a winning position for white. So not a hasty move like this, but instead Fabi finds a different idea. A very active one. He plays knight to f5. Now going for that very strong e3 square. The pawn on f4 is guarding it very nicely, and the bishop captures on d5 is the best way to go. If you allow knight to e3 without getting any compensation, then knight from e3 will even be guarding the pawn on d5. So we have bishop captures, knight to e3. Now, of course, your rook is attacked on f1, but also the bishop on d5 is undefended, so there is only one move here for white, and that is rook captures. We have f captures and queen captures on e3. So Fabi is now up the exchange. He has a rook for a knight, but he still has to activate those rooks to be able to do something, and Anand has 2 extra pawns for being down the exchange. So first, the bishop captures on a4. There is time to grab a pawn. Rook to a1. We have rook to e7 attacking the queen, queen to d2, and now bishop to b5. Rook captures on a5, Anand grabs a pawn as well. Bishop captures, queen captures, and now rook to e1 check. King to f2, and now rook f to e8. And here the position is very, very difficult for white. White has to figure out how to approach this. Fabi said that when he played this move, he thought that he was winning, and he couldn't really find any good moves for white. He thought that if g3, then queen to f5 is coming. You know, if g3, then queen to f5 with ideas of queen coming to h3, and of course, if you capture the queen, then rook 8 to e2 will be checkmate. So as Fabi said in an interview, Anand did dodge a bullet here. But Anand finds rook to a8. It's the strongest move recommended by the engine, and it keeps white alive. So queen to f4. We have rook captures, and now queen to d1. A move like g3 does seem to solve all of white's problems, but after queen to c1, white really doesn't have a good move here. Your b2 pawn is attacked, and you know, a queen to e1 is coming, and you're going to lose something. If you protect the pawn, then queen e1 check is coming. King moves, and now rook comes with check. King h3, queen f1, this will be checkmate. Now the rook is blocking queen's defense of f1. So after rook captures on e8, Anand tries queen to d1. He gives up the h2 pawn. We have queen captures, and now queen back to d2. So a very interesting defense. Queen to h4 check, king to f1, queen to h1 check, king to f2, and Fabi repeats. Queen to h4 check, king f1, and this is move 42 now. The time control has been reached, and here Fabi does not repeat, and he doesn't want to draw here. He plays rook to a8. The rook is now ready to come to a2. It's a very dangerous position, of course, grabbing a pawn here. There's really no time for this. If you grab it, then rook to a1, and white is lost here. You move the king, the queen is coming here, and there's really no good move you can make. You can't escape with the king. The rook will simply win the queen. Whatever you do, there's really no point in doing something like this. So after rook to a8, we have king to e2. Now rook to a1. King to d3, trying to escape, and b5 now, not allowing the king to escape to c4. Here Anand plays c4, we have pawn captures, king captures, and now comes queen to f4, offering a trade of queens. And it's very interesting, should Anand accept the trade of queens here and try to hold this position being up a pawn? Well, not really, and after some consideration Anand decides against this. If you play this and now, for example, push b4, king g7 is coming, b5, and the problem is after rook to b1, there is no way for white to ever push b6, and there are really no useful moves here for white. Black will eventually win all of the pawns and win the game. For example, if white tries to activate his king, for example king d5, black will defend his pawn on d6, and then after white figures out any kind of plan, attacking the g2 pawn, king captures, rook captures, b6 is coming now, but now the king will also prevent the pawn. So after bishop to d5, going for bishop to e6 to prevent pawn from being pushed all the way to h1, h4, now comes bishop to e6 blocking, but now rook to d2. d5 protecting the pawn, and now rook d3, simply wasting a move because white doesn't have useful moves here. King attacks rook, now simply rook b3, and there is no way to defend this. Now you will finally lose this pawn, and then black will activate his king and push the white king back and win the game. So of course that's only one of the ways you can do this, but Anand decides against it. So queen to e2, avoiding a trade of queens. Queen to c1, this comes with check. And now what do you do here? If you play king b3, then you get queen to d1, and after queens are exchanged, that's a winning endgame for Fabi. On the other hand, after queen c1 check, if you go king to d3, again queen d1 check exchanges queens, and it will be a winning endgame for Fabi. So after queen c1, Anand tries king to b5, and this is a very important moment in the game, because here you could try a lot of ideas, but there is only one move here that will win the game for Fabi, and that move is queen to c8, and it's the move Fabi did play in the game. If you try now to force things with queen to e1, then after queen captures, rook captures, and b4, black will not be able to win this endgame because the white pawn is already on b4, and after king a6, the pawn will be able to be pushed forward. So probably your engine, my engine as well, it doesn't give all that much here for black. But I saw this position was evaluated by the Norwegian supercomputer, and it gives queen to c8 as the only winning move and completely crushing, and Fabi plays it. The idea behind queen to c8 is queen to a6 check, of course, now winning the queen on e2, and there is no good defense against this. If you try king b4, then you get queen b8 check, queen blocks, now queen captures, and now rook to d1, and it's a different position than the one we had, if you remember this one, because here the pawn is already on b4, there is no threat here for black, white will simply continue playing. On the other hand, here there's no time to push b4, rook is already attacking the d4 pawn, and after king c4 and king g7, two important tempos were won, and the black will indeed win this game. So after queen to c8, the only other idea other than moving the king is maybe you can try to move the queen. If you try and move the queen, then you get queen a6 check, king moves, queen checks again, king moves, and now after rook check, you will simply force the king, and then black will win the queen and the game, of course. So after this queen to c8 move, king to b6 is played, and here Fabi said that he knew that this was winning, in a whole lot of different ways. Queen to b8 was played, now comes king to c6, and after rook to c1, it was in this position on move 50 that Viswanathan Anand resigned the game. Why did he resign? Well, if you go king d7, you try to escape, then comes rook c7, king captures, queen b6 check, king moves, and now rook e8 will win you the queen. King has to move, and then rook captures on e2, wins the game and the queen wins the queen and the game. On the other hand, after this rook to c1 check, if you try to block bishop to c4, then okay, it seems like maybe you will be able to defend, but it loses to this variation, queen c8 check, king moves, and now rook captures on c4. It seems like white will now be up a pawn, but after queen to g8 check, this is the move you had to find. You realize that there is no square where the king can go to and still protect the white queen. So here the king has to part with his queen, king captures, and now queen captures on c4. It's all over, black wins this game. So after rook to c1, Anand resigned, and a very nice victory for Fabiano Caruana. So we should never forget to show the correct standings after the game, so let's do it now so we don't forget. So let's check it out. After round 8, we have a 4-player tie. So it's Magnus Carlsen with 4 points, then Wesley So also with 4 points, then Hikaru Nakamura with 4, and Fabiano Caruana all with 4 points. Then Mamedyarov, Aronyan, Anand, Karakin, Vasyl Agrav, and Dingliren, who left the tournament, of course. There's no real point in counting him. So yeah, 4-player tie before the final round, and I believe Fabiano Caruana is the only player that has the white pieces tomorrow. Or should I say today, because I'm making the video today, but yeah. in the final round, Fabi is the only one that has the white pieces. And yeah, I just wanted to mention, if you can see here, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov, 3.5 out of 8. So he will not be playing in the final round. He already played all of his rounds, as he did face Ding Liren. But as you can see, he did not win a single game in this tournament. And I saw an interview with him, and he said that, well, it was very hard for him to remember when was the last time he played a tournament without actually winning any games. I believe he mentioned it was some 10 years ago, or either 10 years ago or in 2010. So either 10 or 8 years ago. And you know, he will sometimes lose games in the tournament, but he will always win games. But he says that he feels, you know, he's not too happy about not winning even one game. But he did have a huge toothache for the first couple of rounds, and I believe he had to go have a tooth operation, or it was some kind of an emergency. So yeah, I can imagine that playing such strong players with a toothache is never pleasant. But yeah, we have one more round to go. I do hope you are enjoying the coverage so far, and that you have enjoyed this game. I would like to thank Max Paget, Danny McCullough, John Trench, and John Trench for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon with a nice video or two from the final round of the 2018 Altibox Norway Championship. Thank you all, and good luck in the photo challenge.